All right, everyone, welcome back to the Upstate Scavenger channel. My name's Robert, and today we're going to be doing a cast iron restoration on a Griswold number 10, and it's going to be a large block logo. Came across this at a local estate sale, and the price was right, so I went ahead and bought it. It did come with the lid, but we're going to use that lid restoration for another video at another time. Today we're focusing on restoring the skillet. And here we go. Let's get started. Okay, so the skillet's been in this lye tank probably about 3 months now. So it should be clear of any carbon, any grease buildup that it has. And that's kind of where you can see if it's been cracked or anything like that. That will expose itself. But I glove up because this stuff will irritate your skin. If you left it in there for a good while, it could do some damage, burns or whatever. But we're going to reach in here and pull out the Griswold 10 and move forward over to the E-tank. Okay, here you can see the bottom of the Griswold. It's got some of the loose carbon buildup there, and that'll knock off in the wash. When I wash it here in this tub, all it is soapy water. Kind of nullifies the lye that's on it, and that way I can take my gloves off now. And basically I'm just going to use a little steel scrubby and just knock it off the rest of the buildup. Alright, once I've got that there, you can see how that loose carbon is removed. So stepping over to the E-tank now, and just showing you here like how that has come off. And we're going to attach it to the 9-wire is what I hang this on. I've got a threaded rod and I use that sometimes, but I'll flip it over and hang it with the 9-wire. It seems to get a little better connection. And that's the main thing, is that current is going down that wire into that skillet. So we're going to lower it down here and I'll give you a little close-up view of what the action is. All right, just a quick explaining what I'm doing here. This is the positive lead from my charger going to the sacrificial metal, which is my stainless steel. Negative cable will attach to the 9-wire going down to the pan, and that's the process. It'll take the rust from the pan and move it over to the stainless steel. This is a manual charger. If you're going to do this, running 12 volts, 10 amps, plenty. I keep it on hold, and again, it's a manual charger. The automatic chargers will not work for this. Now, I keep everything on all the time. I just use the plug. That way I know it doesn't have power. When I'm done, I unplug it. When I'm ready to go, I plug it in. And you'll see here are the bubbles, and the process begins of electrolysis.
Two hours later.
Okay, so once we're finished here, now I could check this pan. If it wasn't to my satisfaction, I could insert it back into the tank, turn it back on, let it sit for another hour or two, and just come back and check it as needed. This one wasn't that bad, so we're gonna move forward here. I'm gonna check it out, give it a little dip and rinse it off, and then we're going to take it inside, and that's where the cleaning begins. Okay, once we've moved inside now, I'm just rinsing this one with Dawn and a nylon scrubby brush. This skillet is not in bad shape at all. I'll move on to an SOS pad, but if I had some buildup or some shadowing, staining, I would use the Barkeeper's Friend with this, along with a stainless steel scrubby. As you can see here, I've moved on to a SOS pad, and the way you can tell you're making progress is your bubbles, they're kind of gray, and as you rinse and repeat, they're going to lighten up and just be more brighter. The bubbles will, you'll see that. But as a disclaimer here, if you're married or you have a significant other, do not do this in their kitchen. I live by myself, so I do what I want. But if you want to keep the peace in your house, do not do this in your kitchen sink like I do. You can see how the bubbles have kind of lightened up more now. We're coming to the end of it here. We're going to towel dry next after this rinse. Okay, and what I'm feeling here with my thumb, I was like, oh no, we got a crack, but it's not. It's called a sand shift, and as they're making these with the mold, somehow it shifts inside there. It causes a little ridge, but it's quite normal for that time period. So, not a crack. Okay, as I finish towel drying here, we're gonna spray it with Pam next. There I'm checking out that sand shift again. And if I didn't do this step with the Pam and just left it like that, that pan would rust over again pretty quickly. So I've got other skillets I'm doing. When I season, I'll do 6 to 8 pans at a time, or items, and that way it stops it from flash rusting. Up next, now this pan's been sitting for a day as I finished up the other ones. There's the lid that's going to go with this pan, but we're just focusing on the skillet. I'm just giving it a quick wipe down. I'm going to put it in the oven at 200 degrees for about 15 minutes. And that's going to heat that iron up, so when I put the seasoning, which in this case I'm using Crisco, and that will allow that just to melt in, as I will show you here. All right, getting the UV glove on here. That prevents any burns. 15 minutes is up. We're gonna turn the oven up to 300 degrees for the next step. But we're gonna pull the skillet out now and go ahead and season it up with the Crisco. All right, got my little seasoning bandana here. We're gonna load it up with the Crisco oil. Start spreading that around, making sure it gets good and covered. Sometimes you think there's just so much on there, but you're gonna take most of it right off again. We're gonna almost buff it off. And you think you're just wiping it all off, but there's a thin layer still on there. And once that heats up, once we get to the last step in this, where we're gonna leave it in there for 2 hours, that's gonna harden and polymerize. And once you start building up, that's how you get that non-stick surface. So you can see I'm buffing it up, making sure it's covered, buffing it off again. All right, once I buffed it down enough, it goes back in the oven for another 15 minutes, and that allows that Crisco to liquefy even more, and I'll do another buff next. All right, now this step is pretty simple, it's quick. All you're doing is just pulling it out and buffing it. You're getting rid of any of that oil that has pooled up. If you don't, you'll see splotchy patterns in your finish, and you don't want to skip this step. All right, so after that buff, back into the oven, 400 degrees for about 2 hours, 15 minutes. And that allows for the polymerization of the cast iron and oil to form that hard non-stick surface. All right, so where we're at now is this is the end of round one. After letting it cool down here for about an hour or so, we're 200 degrees, and then we're gonna start round two now. So 200 degrees, and it just starts the process over of the Crisco seasoning going back on. All right, I'm seasoning here. Now this is the second round. I must have touched my camera with my glove, had some Crisco on it because it's now blurry. But we're gonna skip over the second step. Basically, it's just the same as each time. And then the next time we come back, we'll start the third round. But again, let it warm up to 200 degrees. I drop the heat down to 200 degrees. Oil it another 15 minutes at 300 degrees, pull it out, and then 2 hours, 15 minutes at 400 degrees. We'll do that step. So we're gonna jump ahead here to the third round next. Okay, now we're gonna start the third round. The pan is at 200 degrees right now. We're gonna use the Crisco again to season it up. As you can tell now how dark the pan is getting after 2 rounds. This next one, this should be it for a skillet. 3 rounds is plenty, I think, if you do it right. But we're gonna season it up, and then we'll buff it all off and back in at 300 degrees for 15 minutes. All right, just repeating the steps, 15 minutes, we're out. We're gonna buff it off just to make sure there's no splotchiness, any pooling up. So back in the oven, 400 degrees for 2 hours, 15 minutes. All right, after the 2 hours, 15 minutes, we let it cool down now where I can actually reach in with my hand and pull it out. We are done. The skillet has been restored. We have a nice, rich black color. The lettering is pristine on this skillet. It does have a little spin and wobble, but that's just the age. I mean, you're looking at almost 100-year-old skillet brought back to life, and probably will last for another 100 years, barring any major accidents of dropping it or cracking it. But I hope you enjoyed it. I always find it fascinating to bring these things back to life, and you could make a couple bucks too. All right, y'all have a good one.